My name is Daniel Mercer, and I'm 35 years old, one Sunday this past June. My mother stood up at family dinner, tapped her water glass, and announced that my older brother and his two kids were moving into my house. My house. Nobody looked at me. Nobody asked. I said nothing. I just passed the green beans. What they didn't know was that 2 days earlier, I had sat in a title office across town and signed that house away until my wrist ached. It was already sold. The truck they rented, the boxes they packed, the keys my mother copied from my emergency spare. All of it was headed for a front door that no longer belonged to me, and the truck was only the beginning. The house was a 1956 brick ranch at 217 Walnut Ridge Drive, and before my family turned it into a solution for Jason, it was the first thing in my life that was only mine. I bought it in 2018 when I was 27. For $89,000. Every cent of the down payment came from tax seasons I worked while friends were at weddings. I'm a CPA, I do other people's math for a living, so I know exactly what things cost. That house cost me 7 years of weekends. I sanded the floors myself. Badly the first time. Better the second. I patched drywall in the hallway after watching 3 videos and pretending the fourth made me confident. When the garage door chain snapped, I fixed it in the cold with a flashlight between my teeth. Out front, I planted peonies because my grandmother had grown them beside her porch, and I wanted one living thing there from a gentler part of the family. Nobody helped me move in. Nobody really came after. In 7 years, my parents ate under my roof exactly 0 times. My mother had been inside 4 times, and 2 were because she needed me to print forms. In the Mercer family, Daniel came to them. My life was never treated like a place people visited. It was treated like storage with a mortgage. But by May, I had a secret. A good one. My firm asked me to lead the new office opening near Indian Lake. Managing director. My name on the door, my own staff. A raise I had earned one brutal tax season at a time. I said yes before my boss finished explaining the parking. Then I made a plan. My friend Mark Reynolds, a realtor, knew a young couple, Nathan and Emily Carter, who wanted the school district and hated bidding wars. No sign, no listing photos, one quiet walkthrough, one inspection. One clean offer for $272,000. We closed June 5th. I signed a 28-day post-closing occupancy agreement, which meant I kept living there while the house already belonged to someone else. My family knew none of it. To understand why I didn't laugh in my mother's face, you need to understand my actual job in the Mercer family. Not son, not brother. Emergency contact with a checking account. I had done my parents' taxes since I was 19. When their roof started leaking in 2021, I wrote the $4,800 check, and my mother called me a good man, which in our family meant the invoice was closed. When Jason's marriage fell apart, I was the one at his kitchen table sorting insurance forms, custody notes, and unopened envelopes while he watched football highlights on his phone. Jason was 39. 8 months earlier, he'd been laid off from an auto parts distribution center, and by spring he was back in my parents' spare room. His kids, Chloe and Ben, lived mostly with their mother, Rachel. In our family, there were 2 kinds of sons, the one who needed saving, and the one who knew where the forms were. 5 years ago, I gave my mother a spare key for emergencies. I used to think we meant the same thing by that word. The first Sunday of June looked like every Sunday I could remember. My parents' dining room, the good tablecloth, pot roast, rolls a little too dark on the bottom. My father, Walter, quiet at the end of the table. My chair was the one closest to the kitchen because, if ice was needed, or gravy, or a trash bag, everyone's eyes had learned where to land. Jason sat across from me, eating like a man who had never been asked to notice what anything cost. Chloe was drawing on the back of a church bulletin. Ben kept telling a story about a beetle he found near the driveway, starting over every time somebody blinked. I remember feeling almost soft about it. This was probably my last normal dinner with them, and I was the only one who knew. I had planned to come by later that week, sit my parents down, and say it cleanly. I got promoted, I sold the house, I'm moving north in July. Then my mother stood up. Patricia Mercer was 64, and when she tapped her water glass twice, the room obeyed. She had her church voice on, the warm one that made decisions sound like blessings. "Your father and I have wonderful news," she said, smiling at Jason. My stomach went still. "We've decided that Jason and the children will move into Daniel's house on July 11th. She said it like she was announcing a scholarship. Nobody asked me if I had decided anything. "It's perfect," she continued. "Daniel rattles around in 3 bedrooms by himself. Chloe can have the front room with the flowers under the window. Ben can take the smaller room, and Jason will use the master. Daniel doesn't need all that closet space. She had assigned my closet. My father studied his plate, Aunt Denise said. What a blessing. Jason gave me the tired little grin that had been getting him forgiven since middle school. It'd really help. Man, he said. That was the request. 4 words, dropped after the verdict. Then my mother delivered the line she had clearly polished before dinner. Family doesn't leave good rooms sitting empty. Everyone nodded. I looked at the green beans in my hand and felt, under the scrape of silverware, the memory of a pen moving across closing documents 2 days earlier. The house was already sold, so I passed the bowl. I know the obvious question. Why didn't I stand up right there and say, the house is sold? I've asked myself that more times than anyone in my family ever will. The answer has 3 parts. First, reflex. When you spend 35 years being told you're the reasonable one, your body learns to go quiet before your mind has voted. My silence at that table wasn't strategy yet. It was training. Second, strategy. If I had said sold over pot roast, my mother would not have heard a fact. She would have heard a problem with 5 weeks left to solve. There would have been meetings, phone calls, church people, Aunt Denise on my porch, and Chloe looking up at me asking why Uncle Daniel didn't want them. Third, the part I hate admitting, I still wanted a soft landing. I thought I could sit my parents down privately and tell them like adults. I gave myself 1 week. My mother needed 3 days to prove I was wrong. On Wednesday evening, my mother called while I was standing in the kitchen at Walnut Ridge, looking at a stack of boxes I had labeled office files in black marker. I answered because 35 years of habit still had reflexes I hadn't killed yet. She was already talking. July 11th is confirmed, she said. Denise reserved the box truck through the church discount. We'll start with the kids' beds. Then Jason's things. Your recliner in the den will need to go somewhere else because Chloe needs that wall for a desk. I looked at my recliner. I had bought it after my first year making manager. Apparently, it had been reassigned. Mom, I said, we need to talk about the house. Oh, honey. Don't get tense, she said. Soft as a pillow over a face. Nobody expects you to have everything ready. Pastor Ray's wife already knows. And she said what you're doing is a beautiful witness. The church knew. That meant the story was no longer a conversation. It had been published. Mom, I tried again. Thursday. I'll come by Thursday. You, Dad, and me. Good, she said. Bring your measuring tape. Jason thinks the garage has room for his bench. Then, in the voice she used to end arguments before they started, she said, it's settled, Daniel. Click. Thursday became impossible because my mother remembered a church rummage sale, and somehow that ranked above the adult son whose house she had given away. Saturday. Jason texted, swinging by to look at the rooms. What time works? I wrote back that I was at the office, which was true. When I came home at 4, his pickup was already at the curb. Jason sat on my porch steps like a man waiting for keys at a rental office. Relax, he said. I just looked through the windows. Then he walked my yard with me, pointing. Chloe would love the front room. Ben could sleep near the hallway. His weight bench would fit in the garage. The peonies might have to move if he put up a playset later. My brother had a future in my house, and nobody had asked me to be in it. The worst part was that he wasn't cruel. He was comfortable. Our mother had said the rooms were his. So, in his mind, they were. The next day, I skipped Sunday dinner for the first time in years and picked up Chloe and Ben from Rachel instead. We went to the ice cream place with the crooked cow sign, where Ben ordered blue sprinkles and then argued they were actually dinosaur eggs. Chloe climbed into the booth with her sketchbook hugged to her chest like she was carrying glass. I made you something, she said. She turned the page around. It was my house. Triangle roof, front walk, pink blobs where the peonies were, 2 stick kids in the yard, and 1 tall stick man by the door, across the top. In careful 3rd grade letters, she had written, Uncle Daniel's house. Grandma says we get to live there, Ben said through a mouthful of ice cream. Do you still get to live there, too? Chloe watched my face. Can I have the flower room? That was when I understood how complete my mother's trap was. If I said no, I would be the man who disappointed 2 kids. Not the adult who promised them a house that had never been hers to promise. I bought another round of sprinkles. Then I folded Chloe's drawing carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. The following Thursday, I finally got my audience. I drove to my parents' house after work with a folder on the passenger seat. Not closing papers, nothing dramatic, just 1 printed page of bullet points. Because I have always organized courage the same way I organize receipts. My parents were at the kitchen table with decaf coffee. I sat down, kept my hands flat, and started clean. Mom? Dad? Before anything else happens with July 11th, there's something you need to know about the house. My mother lifted one hand like a crossing guard. Daniel, she said, please don't do this. Do what? Make this hard. Then came the warm flood. Jason was drowning. Chloe and Ben needed stability. I had more room than one man needed. Sharing would cost me nothing. She touched my wrist when she said nothing. My father stood up, mumbled something about the mower, and disappeared into the garage. I looked at my mother and understood something with perfect clarity. She wasn't having a conversation. She was holding a ceremony where my only line was yes. So, I closed my folder. Fine, I said. It was not fine. The next week, the campaign spread without ever sounding like a campaign. Monday, Aunt Denise texted me a photo of the rental reservation. Truck confirmed. So proud of you. Tuesday, at the hardware store, Pastor Ray's wife touched my elbow near the paint samples and told me not many men my age would be so generous. She said my mother was glowing when she talked about me. Wednesday, Jason sent a link to bunk beds on sale with the message, these might actually fit. Thursday, my mother called about a casserole recipe and still found a way to say it before hanging up. Good rooms shouldn't sit empty when children need them. Honey, there it was again. Her scripture. My house had been turned into a moral problem, and everybody around me had been handed a shovel. That is how families like mine bury you. Not with cruelty, with praise. One warm spoonful at a time. Until the hole is your exact shape and everyone swears you climbed in. I stayed pleasant. I kept my answers short. Every night, I crossed one square off the calendar. 13 days left. I no longer felt guilty. I felt organized. Rachel asked me to meet for coffee the last week of June. My brother's ex-wife was a nurse, which meant she could spot bad information before it got a pulse. She slid a folder across the table. The kids keep talking about the move, she said. Patricia gave me these. Inside was Chloe's school transfer packet, half filled in my mother's careful handwriting. Address line 217 Walnut Ridge Drive, my address, written in ink by a woman who had never asked me a question with a blank in it. They haven't been submitted, Rachel said. I have to sign, and I don't sign anything I haven't read twice. She watched me. Is this really happening? For the first time since dinner. I told the truth. No, I said. The house is sold. It closed weeks ago. I expected anger. Rachel leaned back and laughed once. Good, she said. Good for you. Then, quieter. Why do you think I left? Daniel, it was never Jason. It was the whole weather system. For once. The truth sat outside my body and the sky stayed up. Ben turned 6 at the end of June. And the party was at my parents' house because everything important in our family somehow happened under my mother's roof. Streamers, folding chairs, a dinosaur cake, church people balancing paper plates on their knees. I was cutting cake at the counter when my mother tapped her glass twice. That sound had started to feel like a smoke alarm. Before cake, Patricia said, smiling at Jason, we have one more little gift. This one is for Daddy. From her apron pocket, she pulled out a set of bright brass keys tied with a red ribbon. I had copies made from my spare, she announced. So, on July 11th, you can just drive right up and walk into your new home. People clapped. Jason held the keys up, grinning awkwardly, and Ben reached for them like they were treasure. Chloe, standing beside me, looked from the ribbon to my face. Are those the keys to your house, Uncle Daniel? I kept the knife moving through the cake. They're Grandma's copies, I said. That was the whole truth. My mother had taken the emergency key I trusted her with and turned it into permission to distribute my life. But those keys were already becoming souvenirs. They just didn't know it yet, the last week of June. I came home early on a Tuesday and knew before I was fully inside. The back door was unlocked. I don't leave doors unlocked, not because I'm afraid of every shadow, but because I live by systems. Lock the door, check the stove, put the file where it belongs. That is how a man keeps his life from leaking out at the edges. My kitchen chair had been moved. The hallway closet was open. A yellow tape measure sat on the windowsill. And it was not mine. There were footprints on the floor I had mopped 2 days earlier. One adult pair and one small pair. My phone buzzed. Jason measured the kids' rooms real quick. Backdoor sticks lull. I stood in my own kitchen, holding that message, feeling the kind of cold that does not raise your voice. The key still worked. That did not mean he had permission to use it. I did not call him. I did not call my mother. I took out a notebook and made a list. Files, quilt, tools, safe box, Chloe's drawing. Last item. Tell the Carters. I called Mark Reynolds that night. And the next evening, Nathan and Emily Carter met me at the coffee shop near the title office. They had bought a quiet ranch house. What they were getting was my family with a rental truck. I told them everything plainly. My relatives believe my brother is moving into your house on July 11th, I said. They've rented a truck. My mother copied keys from my emergency spare. Jason has already used one to get inside. I've tried to tell them, but they keep turning facts into feelings. Emily, who worked pediatric imaging and had the calm face of someone used to frighten children, asked 2 questions. Do the copied keys still work? Yes. Are they dangerous? No, I said, just certain. Nathan wrote something in a small notebook. Locksmith is already scheduled for possession day, he said. My dad taught me you rekai before you unpack. Emily stirred her coffee. It's our home now, she said. We'll be polite but clear. That sentence stayed with me. I had not set a trap. I had just stopped holding the net. July 2nd was my last night at Walnut Ridge. The rooms were empty enough that my footsteps sounded like they belonged to someone else. I swept the floor, then mopped it anyway. Not because the Carters demanded it, but because I believe you hand over a place better than you found it. I ate dinner standing at the counter. Cold pizza on a paper towel, no chair left to sit in. Then, I let myself remember, 27 years old. Signing a mortgage I barely understood, but fully intended to honor. The first winter when the furnace died and I slept in a hoodie. Then fixed it myself because no one was coming. The Saturday I sanded the hallway twice because the first pass looked like I had attacked it with a farm tool. That house had never been empty. It held my labor, my silence, my repairs, my whole private life. Out front, I dug up one clump of my grandmother's peonies and packed it for the cottage. Then I left my keys on the counter for Nathan and Emily. My mother texted the group chat, moving day July 11th, 9 a.m. I did not answer. The night of July 10th, I sat on the cottage porch with my phone in my hand and a message opened to my mother. The house is sold. It closed in June. Nathan and Emily take possession tomorrow. Please do not bring the truck. It was clean. It was true. It would have saved them one ugly morning. My thumb hovered over send for a long time. Then, I ran the projection, because projections are what I do. If I sent it, the truck would be canceled. Jason would not stand on a stranger's porch with useless keys. My mother would not be embarrassed in front of neighbors. And by Sunday, the campaign would simply change targets. Not the house anymore. The money. For 35 years, I had been my family's airbag. Every time they aimed themselves at a wall, I inflated first and called it love. I deleted the message one line at a time. That night, for the first time, I let the car hit the wall. At 8:40 the next morning, my phone rang. Chloe, Uncle Daniel, she whispered. Small and scared. Why is there a strange lady in your house? I had been awake since 6, dressed since 7, drinking coffee that tasted like cardboard. I will not lie and tell you I was surprised. Sweetheart, I said, already reaching for my keys. Put your dad on. Jason came on the line sounding angry in that confused way people do when reality doesn't obey them. Daniel, what the hell is going on? Some woman won't let us in. I'm on my way, I said. Don't do anything loud. 50 minutes later, I turned onto Walnut Ridge Drive and saw the whole disaster staged on the lawn. A rental box truck blocked the driveway. Its back door was open. Jason's sectional sat halfway down the ramp like a dead animal. Boxes were stacked in the grass. My mother stood on the porch in her church blouse, knocking hard enough to bruise the door. Jason kept shoving the brass key into the new deadbolt. The red ribbon bounced against his wrist every time it failed. And in the doorway stood Emily Carter, calm in blue scrubs, saying, I'm sorry, but this is our home. We bought this house. My mother laughed. No, honey, this is my son's house. Emily said it again. We closed in June. From Daniel Mercer. That was when I stepped out of the car. Crossing that lawn took 10 steps in most of my adult life. Rachel pulled up behind me before I reached the porch. Jason must have called her in the chaos. She saw Chloe and Ben standing near the truck, both confused, both too quiet, and moved fast. Ice cream, she said in the voice nurses use when no one is allowed to argue. Right now, God bless that woman. The kids did not see the worst of it. My mother met me halfway across the grass, arms out, palms up, performing confusion for the neighbors who had started appearing on porches with coffee mugs. Daniel, she commanded, tell this woman there has been a mistake. I kept my voice low. There's no mistake, Mom, I sold the house. Her face changed. Not softened. Not broke. Changed. Like a machine missing the gear it needed. It closed in June, I said. It was never the family's to give away. For 1 second. Even the truck seemed quiet. Then my mother found her scripture. Family doesn't leave rooms empty, she said. Louder now. For the porches. That is what family does. Nathan Carter stepped beside Emily. Please move the truck off our driveway, he said evenly. Jason stood on a stranger's porch, staring at the red ribbon keys in his hand. My father walked close to me and spoke almost under his breath. Your grandmother had a piano. That was all. And somehow, it stopped me colder than the whole lawn. The retreat was not graceful. Aunt Denise backed the truck out of the driveway with the jerking fury of a woman who wanted the transmission to testify for her. Boxes went back up the ramp. Nathan helped carry 2 of them because apparently decency was not hereditary in my family. Only stubbornness was. My mother did not help. She stood near Emily's peonies now, arranging her face for the neighbors, then climbed into Denise's cab without looking at me. Jason left the red ribbon keys on the porch rail. I stayed behind and apologized to the Carters. Emily shook her head. You warned us. You did it right. I drove north with the windows down. By the time I reached the cottage, my phone showed 2 screens of missed calls. I ignored all of them except one text from my mother. Family meeting, Tuesday, 6 p.m. You owe your brother that much. There was that word again. Bring the ledger, I thought. I'm good with ledgers, Sunday and Monday. The family court happened without me. The group chat lit up like weather radar. Aunt Denise said she had never been so embarrassed. A cousin I heard from twice a year asked if the kids were just supposed to live in a ditch now. Pastor Ray's wife sent me a private message saying she was praying for my heart, which is church language for, I have already chosen a side. My mother posted once, some people get rich selling family out from under them. Then, silence. Which, from Patricia Mercer, was artillery. And in 2 days of outrage, not one person asked where I lived now. Nobody asked why I sold. Nobody asked if I was okay. Monday night, Rachel called. Don't you dare fold, she said. And listen to me. The kids were never homeless. They live with me. They always have. The move had been about Jason wanting a better school district and my mother wanting grandkids 7 minutes away. The drowning man had been standing in a boat. So I opened 2 accounts, printed the paperwork, and put it in a folder. I got to my parents' house early Tuesday because I wanted the answer before the trial. My father was in the garage, bent over a lawnmower that did not need fixing. Mercer men had always gone to the garage when weather came through the kitchen. What did you mean about the piano, I asked. He kept wiping the same wrench with the same rag. Your grandmother died in 1989, he said finally. Your mother was 26. There was the house on Fairlawn and a Baldwin upright piano. Patty played beautifully. You never knew that. I hadn't. Her brother had just had a son, Dad said. So, your grandfather said the house should go to him. Keep the name going. The piano stayed with the house. Your mother signed the papers by Friday. He looked at the mower. She never played again. I stood there among gas cans and old paint, doing the math that had nothing to do with money. My mother had been forced to swallow a loss and call it love. Now she needed me to swallow mine, too. My mother's kitchen table had hosted every verdict of my life, and that Tuesday it was set for another one. Patricia sat at the head. Jason sat to her right, looking like a man who had been invited to his own trial but not asked to prepare a statement. My father took the chair by the window, half in the room and half already gone. 2 papers lay in the center of the table. The first was a yellow legal pad sheet in my mother's handwriting, numbers stacked in neat columns and underlined twice at the bottom. $60,000? The second was Chloe's school transfer packet, still showing 217 Walnut Ridge Drive as the new address. My dead address, placed facing my chair like evidence. Sit down, honey, my mother said. I stayed standing for 1 second longer than usual, just long enough for her to notice. Then, I sat. You got lucky on that house, she said. And luck like that doesn't belong to one person. It's the Lord providing for the whole family through you. Jason stared at the table. $60,000 puts your brother into a proper rental, she continued. It covers the truck situation, deposits, furniture, first and last month, and lets everyone start fresh. The truck situation, I repeated. Her eyes sharpened, but her voice stayed warm. If you write the check. Saturday is forgotten. You're back at Sunday dinner. Thanksgiving. Christmas morning. Chloe and Ben opening presents here like always. Then she looked toward the refrigerator. where the kids' school photos hung under fruit-shaped magnets. If you don't, she said softly, then you can explain to yourself why you chose money over seeing those children. Grandma decides who comes to grandma's, and their father will support me. She touched Jason's sleeve. Jason looked down so hard I thought he might disappear through the floor. There it was. The whole machine, finally showing its gears. My mother had taken 2 children I loved and put a price tag on the door between us. Every family has a currency. Mine had just printed the exchange rate, $60,000. I want to slow down here, because from the outside, what happened next took maybe 2 minutes. From the inside, it took my whole life. My hand was in my bag, touching the folder I had brought, and both roads opened in front of me as clearly as lines on a tax return. Road 1 was familiar. Write the check. $60,000 was real money, but I had it. That was the dangerous part. The sale had cleared. The numbers worked. The numbers had always worked when my family needed something from me. Roof repair, Jason's divorce paperwork, my parents' insurance mess, car trouble, missed bills, 1,000 swallowed sentences bought one more peaceful Sunday at that table. Road 1 had pavement because I had been laying it for years. And every time I paid, I told myself maybe this would be the payment that made them finally see me. Road 2 had no pavement at all. No Mercer man had walked it. Not my father in 1989, not me at 10, carrying extra chairs, not me at 19, doing tax returns at the kitchen table while Jason disappeared after dinner. I looked at my mother and saw, behind her, a 26-year-old woman signing away a house and a piano, because someone told her that was what family meant. She was not really asking me for $60,000. She was asking me to sign the same thing she signed. She was asking me to become proof that her loss had been love. I took the folder from my bag. No, Mom. She blinked, waiting for the apology that usually came wrapped around my sentences. There wasn't one. I'm not writing that check, I said. And before you tell me again what I owe, that house was never empty. I was living in it. My weekends were in those floors. My money was in that mortgage. My life was in every room you handed away over pot roast. She opened her mouth. I didn't stop. The kids were never homeless. They live with Rachel. They have beds. They have a mother. This was never about shelter. I turned to Jason. You never asked for this, I said. And that's the problem. You never had to. Then I looked back at the table. You don't get to invent a fire and bill me for the water. My mother's chair scraped backward. I am not finished, I said. That sentence alone seemed to confuse the room. I opened my folder and laid my own papers on the table, squared to the wood grain the way she had squared hers. These are 529 education accounts, I said. One for Chloe, one for Ben. I opened them yesterday. Jason finally looked up. I'll put $200 a month into each account until they turn 18. I am the account owner. They are the beneficiaries. That means the money goes to school, not rent, not truck fees, not furniture, not through this table, and not through Mom. My mother stared at the pages like they were written in another language. I turned to Jason. Rachel already said the kids can come to the cottage on weekends. The lake, birthdays, burgers, spare rooms, all of that stays open. I love your children, that part doesn't change. Then I looked at my mother. What changes is the root. Help goes directly to them now. It does not pass through your hands first. For the first time all night, her face broke without performance. I gave up everything for this family, she whispered. I sat in my truck in the gravel drive and cried for maybe 90 seconds, not because I had lost everything, but because something heavy had finally come off my shoulders. Rachel's text glowed on my phone. The kids still want the lake Saturday. I wiped my face, started the engine, and typed back the richest word, Saturday. Here is the honest accounting of what happened after. Because I refused to pretend boundaries fix everything overnight. My mother kept her word. My chair at Sunday dinner stayed empty through August, September, and most of October. At church, the story became that I had abandoned the family after making money on a house. Aunt Denise mailed me an invoice for the truck. $180. I paid it the same day with the memo line for the truck. Not the guilt. She waited 2 weeks to cash it. Then she cashed it. The family group chat went quiet around me. Then simply continued without me. Like a river closing over a pulled stone. That hurt more than I like admitting. But on the first of every month, 2 transfers went out exactly as scheduled. Jason surprised everyone. He found a 2-bedroom apartment near the kids' actual school and took a forklift job with weekends free. Not perfect, not transformed, just responsible in public for the first time I could remember. My father called every Thursday from the garage, and I ran my new office by the lake. The peony took root beside my cottage steps. The second Saturday of October, a truck came up my gravel drive. This time, I was expecting it. Chloe and Ben spilled out before Jason had fully parked. Chloe with her sketchbook, Ben wearing a cape over a sweatshirt. They ran toward the lake like they owned the shoreline and had serious business with the geese. Jason came up the porch steps slower, holding something in one hand. The brass keys, still on the ring, still tied with the limp red ribbon. "These don't open anything," he said. Then, he held them out to me. "Figured you should be the one to throw them away." That was the whole apology. For Jason Mercer. It was a speech. I took the keys and dropped them in the toolbox by the door. I kept the ribbon. He stayed for burgers. He was awkward, but he was trying. Later, when Ben fell asleep on my couch, Jason carried him to the spare room and stood in the doorway. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," I said. "That's the point." Inside, under a magnet, Chloe's drawing hung triangle roof, peonies, 2 stick kids, 1 tall stick man by the door. That evening, she took it down, changed 1 line, and put it back straight Uncle Daniel's lake house. "The flowers stayed," she said, "because I had brought them with me." Down the hall, she and Ben slept in rooms nobody assigned. I used to think love meant filling every room my family pointed at. Now I know a room is worth filling only when you were asked and free to answer. None of us were empty rooms.